Hi guys, and welcome back to another lesson in Algebra 1. Today's lesson is Unit 2, Lesson 1. We're going to be solving 1 and 2 step inequalities. And so there are some objectives for today, and the first one is I know how to solve and then graph an inequality. The second one is I know to flip the sign of the inequality when multiplying or dividing by a negative. And then the third thing is I know when to use an open or closed circle and which way to draw the arrow. Alrighty, so let's get into these notes and start, figuring out all these aspects. Okay, so let's say that we have this symbol here in our equation, a less than sign. So it means it's less than or it's fewer than. Now, the important part for today is that you need to know that we're going to graph that with an open circle. So let me show you what I mean. This was n is less than 0. So I'm going to draw an open circle on my 0. That open circle means that it does not include that number. Okay. So when it's open, it's including everything up to that, but not that number exactly. Now, it's less than, so we need to shade it in the way where we're choosing all the numbers that are less than 0, and it's going to be this way. Okay, so everything that's less than 0, we can shade this away over here. Um, and it does kind of give you the little hint, when you look at this, you got the way that it's pointing. Okay, so it's pointing, to the left. And so that kind of helps you know which way to shade it. All right, let's look at this next one. We have a less than or equal. Well, a less than or equal is different from just a regular less than because it includes that particular point. So it's going to be less than or equal to. And then there's some other words that it can be, and those will come into play when we do word problems, which is not today, but it will be, in subsequent lessons. But the important part here is that we are going to graph this with a closed circle. And that closed circle means that it includes this number. Whoops. Let's see, we'll go do this. We're going to do a closed circle here. And so the closed circle means that it includes that number. So it includes the 0. This one over here does not include the 0. Now, the arrow, we can see that it's less than that. And so the less than direction is this way. And we can see that the symbol, it does give us a little clue that that's the way we're going to shade it to help you remember. All right, well, what if it's the other way? So instead of less than, we have greater than. Okay, so it's greater than. Another way to say it is more than. Well, how do we draw that? So this does not have an equal sign in it. So again, we're going to use an open circle. It would help if I switched back and forth between the right writing thing. So we're going to use an open circle. So we'll go ahead and write that. We're going to use an open circle. And this, because it's greater than that, the way that's greater on this number line is this way. Okay. All these numbers that are greater than 0 are included. And that, symbol does give us a little bit of a clue that we're going to point the arrow in that direction. Let's see, let's look at the next one. So we can put an equal sign in it. And when it's an equal sign, it's going to be a closed circle. Okay, so if we put the one here at the 0, we're going to close that circle because it includes that particular point exactly. And then this is giving us everything that is greater than 0 and includes 0. So that is also giving us this little clue here. All right, let's go ahead and write a little bit more notes. So we drew these pictures so that you can remind yourself of what they are. But let's see, it says solve inequalities in almost Okay, but it's not quite, almost the same steps as equations. And when you multiply or divide by a negative, you are going to flip the inequality. And you will draw an open circle for less than or greater than. And you will make a closed circle for the ones that have the equal sign in it. So less than and equal to, or greater than and equal to. And then the last step is that you're going to draw an arrow in the direction that makes the inequality true. Okay, so we're going to draw the direct arrow in the direction that makes the inequality true. If I am going a little too fast, of course, just pause it. Let's go ahead and look at this first one and let's solve this. Okay, so I always like to just rewrite my equation again because it gives me a chance to look everything over and to see all the different components. And so I need to get P by itself, just like regular solving an equation, but this is an inequality. And so I'm going to, when it says negative 12 to move to the other side, I've got to add 12. Okay, because negative 12 plus 12 is going to give me 0. So those two cancel out. Okay, so that's going to cancel out. And I'm going to get P is greater than 7 plus 12 is 19. Okay, that's my answer. I got P all by itself. So that was nice and easy. That was only one step, right? So when we look at this, we see that it's this guy, the greater than. And so how do we draw that? We look up here. We're going to use that open circle, right? So we're going to put the open circle, and then we're going to shade in the direction that makes it true. So I'm going to put my open circle here at 19. And so over here would be 21 or 20 and 21. And over here would be 18 and 17. And then we're looking for everything that is greater than 19. So we can go this way. Everything that's greater than 19 is going to be in this direction. Okay. This symbol gave us a clue that that's the way that we draw it, but I also want to point out something. You can test a point. So let me show you what I mean about test a number. Okay. One of the easiest numbers is always going to be 0. So if I just pick a number and I pick 0, let's say that I pick, P equals 0, and I drop it in here for P. So instead of P, I'm going to write 0. Is this here a true statement? Is 0 greater than 19? And no, that is a false statement, right? So that lets me know I wouldn't shade it in this direction, okay? This side would be incorrect because if I included 0, 0 is not greater than 19. I can try it with another number, and let me just erase that real fast. Let's say that I try it with, I don't know, let's try it with 25. And so I'm going to pick 25, and I'm going to plug it in for P. And so then I ask myself, okay, self, is that 25, is it greater than 19? And yeah, that is a true statement. Okay. And so we know that we've, shaded in the correct direction because 25 is greater than 19. And so the way we shaded it is right. So that was two ways that we could look at how to shade it. First, I picked 0, which was not in the correct way, and it gave us a false statement. And then I picked one that was in a true side. And so that showed us that that was a side to shade. Alrighty, let's look at this next one step. So we got W plus 3 is less than or equal to 4. I need to get that W by itself. So plus 3, we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. And so that will cancel. 3 minus 3 gives me 0, right? So we got W is less than or equal to 4 minus 3 is going to give me 1. Okay, that's my answer. I got my W by itself. So good for us. Now, I come over here and I'm going to put 1. And over here would be like 2 and 3. And over here would be 0 and negative 1. This guy has an equal sign in it. Okay, so when I look at the less than and equal, I can see that's right here. Okay, so it's going to make a picture like this. It's going to have that closed circle because it's got the equal sign in it. Whoops. Okay, so it's going to have that closed circle because it includes that 1. And then I'm going to shade it. It says less than or equal to. So this side is all going to be less than. Okay, all these numbers are going to be less than that. Oops. Go fill that in again. My thing keeps automatically erasing on me. We'll just kind of shade it like that. All right. If I wanted to test a point, let's just take a second and we're going to test a point just to kind of show which way we're shading it makes sense. So I'm going to test 0. I'm going to test W equals 0 because 0 is honestly the easiest thing to test, most of the time. So if my equation is, W plus 3 is less than or equal to 4, and I substitute 0 in for W, I get W plus 3 less than or equal to 4. Well, is 3 less than or equal to 4? And it is a true statement. Okay, and so because that's a true statement, we're going to shade in the direction of 0, and that's the way we shaded it. We shaded it the direction that included 0. If it came in with a false statement, we would shade the other way. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, so we've got 4x is less than 12. Okay, when 4 is touching x, that means multiply. So to get rid of that, we need to divide. And so we're going to divide by 4 on both sides. And that's going to give me x is less than 3. And that's my answer. Okay, so how to do that? I put my 3 over here. And then, 4 and 5, that would be my bigger numbers. And 2 and 1, that would be my smaller numbers. This symbol, we can go up here, less than. Let's see, how do we draw that again? Less than, we're going to have an open circle. I can even go look up here more. My less than, I'm going to have an open circle, and you can see which way I'm shading it. Okay. So let's come down here, and I'm going to put my open circle, and it's all the numbers that are less than that. And that open circle means that all the numbers are true all the way up to 2.9999999 would make a true statement, but it would not include 3. Okay, I'm not going to do a test point, but I showed you earlier how you could do one if you wanted to. Okay, let's look at this one here. This one looks a little bit weirder. So we've got W divided by minus 5. So when you see a fraction just means it's a division problem, like it's W divided by negative 5. So the opposite of division is to multiply. So we're going to multiply by that negative 5 to get it out of the denominator. But I want to make a little alert here, okay? Anytime we multiply or divide by a negative, we have to flip the fraction, flip the inequality. Okay. So this inequality, it looks like this right now, but when I go to write this again, it's going to look different. So my negative 5's cancel out. Negative 5 times negative 1 is going to give me positive 5, but I've got to flip my inequality. This is my answer. So I can come over here. This is a closed-in circle. It's less than. Oh, wait, whoops. You know what I would do? I would go ahead and flip it where I would put my y like this. I would probably write it like this. And then that way, the way that it points is helping you draw it. Because what we needed is w is greater than 5. So we needed the greater way. So you know how you can like flip pancakes and it's still a pancake? If you end up with your unknown on the right side, we can just flip it like a pancake. You know, that's all we did. We just did a little. So then that way it helps us know which way the arrow's going. So that little trick about it kind of pointing the way the arrow goes only works if my unknown is on my left-hand side. Okay, so let's look at this next one. We have 62 plus m divided by 3 is greater than 37. So to get rid of that denominator, this is, you know, when it's a fraction, it's a division problem. So to get rid of that denominator, it's being divided by 3. So the opposite of that is to multiply by 3. So we're going to get 62 plus m is greater than, and then 37 times 3 is going to give me 111. Okay. To get m by itself, I'm going to subtract 62 from both sides. So that cancels. And I get m is greater than 111 minus 62 is going to give me 49. So that's my answer. And then how we are going to graph it is I'm going to put my 49 here, 50, 51, 48, 47. I'm going to put my open circle at 49, and it's saying everything that's greater than 49 is true. So everything that's this way is true. Okay. We could test a point and see if it makes a true statement. Like if we pick the number 50, okay, would that make it true? And then you look over here and you're like, is 50 greater than 49? Yeah, that's true. So, you know, it worked the way we shaded it. And I realized in my sidetrackingness about flipping pancakes over there, I forgot to write my numbers. So let's go back and write the numbers real fast. So this was w is greater than or equal to 5. So I'm just going to put my 5, 6, 7, 4, and 3. So now we have numbers on our number line. All right, let's look at this last one. So we have negative 2w minus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 8. I'm going to add my 2 to both sides. I get negative 2w, and I'm already having a little bit of a spidey sense that we are going to have a little alert here. Let's go ahead and write alert. Okay, so what is going on here? We have a negative. We have a negative in front of that 2 that's attached to the w. So what that means is when I go and I divide by negative 2, I am going to have to flip my sign. Okay, so the sign here, I'm going to flip it. So this cancels and I get w, flip it. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 is 3, and that's my answer. So I can come over here and I put 3, 4, 5, 2, and 1. Because it's got an equal sign, I'm going to put a dot that's colored in. And then it's less than. So the less than direction is this way. Okay. I can pick a test point and I can just see, did I do that right? Because, I flipped it and it's like, here, we flip this. Let's just make sure that, I did this right. So let's say that I test 0. Okay, so I'm going to put in a w equals 0. So if I write this equation over again, I got negative 2w minus 2 is greater than or equal to negative 8. If I put a 0 in for this w, I get negative 2 times 0 minus 2 greater than or equal to negative 8. Okay, that 0 part times negative 2, that drops out, right? So negative 2, is that greater than or equal to negative 8? And the answer is yes. That is a true statement. And so we shaded it in the correct way. So when we flipped our inequality, it was just kind of a shorthand way to make sure it's shaded correctly when we multiply or divide by a negative. So, negative 2 is greater than negative 8, which seems weird because it's a small, 2 is a smaller number than 8. But when we're talking about negatives, the negative 2 is closer to 0 than negative 8. So it is a bigger number. Okay. Alrighty, my friends. Until next time. Bye.